Welcome back, Mosaic Souls. Welcome back to day 6 of the 14-day Heart Chakra Healing Challenge. So my computer is still not back. It's still in the shop. And seeing as today is Labor Day, they're like waiting on a part that they ordered in order to fix my computer. So the part hasn't arrived. So I'm still sort of renting this computer from this place. So anyway, moving on to today's challenge, I really wanted to dive into day 6, which is forgiveness of others. And to be honest, behind the scenes, I've been working through the different days of the challenge personally. And I find that even though I'm like packaging this as a 14-day heart chakra healing challenge, I want to invite you to give yourself grace through this process because it might take more than 14 days, right? So, and it's really just about your willingness and your own personal journey and how you work through emotions and work through the densities that happen through healing trauma, healing old wounds and things of that nature. And so I've been giving myself that grace, especially with today's day. Today's day and topic took a few days for me to like work through and really get to a place of like peace around. So recognize that, even through this challenge, even though it says 14 days, it might take you like 5 days to do day 6, you know what I mean? Because you're working through different things and different processes. And I invite you to come back over and over and over to these processes and these questions to soften the energy, especially if the energy feels dense or heavy in certain areas that your part of you isn't necessarily willing to release yet or move through yet, or you're not ready. And that's perfectly fine. You go at your own pace because this is deep inner healing work. And a lot of it, depending on, what you've traversed, will affect how you show up in this challenge and healing your heart and getting back to wholeness, because everyone has been through different things in their lives. And so this is definitely deep healing work. So I just wanted to preface that for today's day. So let's talk about what forgiveness is and what it's not. And we kind of talked about this briefly in day 5 of the challenge. But a lot of times, many of us are dealing with situations where basically in day 5 we talked about forgiveness of ourselves and what that looks like. And I know I got cut off for like half of the stream, so I still have to re-record some of that. But basically in that challenge we really dive in. And if you're interested, if you're watching this for the first time, feel free to join me in the challenge at divinerschool.com. I'll put it in the chat. .com/heart. For those of you who are joining me, we are doing a 14-day heart chakra healing challenge. And this is basically a challenge to help us realign any imbalances, whether the heart chakra is over imbalanced or under imbalanced. We're getting the heart chakra back into alignment so that we can experience more love and abundance in all areas of our lives. Because the heart chakra is sort of just a gateway, not sort of just a gateway into sort of your higher self and higher levels of integration of your soul and your spirit into your life. So, and also just allowing us to experience more joy and love. And a lot of times what we don't recognize is that when we are having a blocked heart chakra, there's only so much joy or only so much love that we allow ourselves due to past traumas, due to past hurts and pains, due to past resentments and current resentments and things of that nature. And so when we heal that part of ourselves, not only do we allow more love in, but we allow more abundance in. When you're holding on to anger or hatred, a lot of times you are blocking other areas of your life from experiencing abundance. And so we want that energy to be free flowing. And that's why we're doing this, right? So let's talk about forgiveness, right? We talked about forgiveness of the self, and now I want to talk about forgiveness of others, right? So what is forgiveness, right? There's a common myth that forgiveness means excusing bad behavior, right? Letting someone back into your life no matter what, or pretending what they did never happened. And that's simply just not true, right? So forgiveness is not pretending you weren't hurt or saying what they did is okay. And it's not allowing someone continued access to hurt you again. It's also not reconciliation or restoring a relationship with someone unsafe, right? So just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that you let people who are unsafe or a while like out there, back into your life, especially if they continue to cause harm. Forgiveness is also not condoning or minimizing harmful behavior or forgetting or erasing what happened. What is forgiveness? It's basically choosing to release the grip of resentment so that these people, external entities or organizations or whatever, their actions no longer control your emotions, right? Releasing the heavy emotional burden tied to that person or organization or entity or situation, right? And it's forgiveness is freeing yourself from carrying the energetic and emotional weight of another person's choice, other people's choices. So when you're freeing yourself from carrying the energetic and emotional weight of that person's choices or another organization or thing's choices, you're freeing yourself from feeling tied down, right? Or holding on to the past as well. Forgiveness is also a choice that you make for your own healing, not for someone else's. Although as a byproduct, it actually can leave room for healing and repairing in relationships that are redeemable, right? And then recognizing that every person operates from their own level of consciousness and awareness, it's although sometimes painfully limited, right? So forgiveness is understanding that, everyone is operating from whatever level of consciousness that they're at, and you don't have to hold that against them, but you also don't necessarily, especially if they are harmful, have to let them back into your life. But if they aren't harmful, you can, it can open the door or gateway for more healing and harmony to happen. And then forgiveness does not mean that they were right. It means that you are choosing to no longer let their actions control your peace. Forgiveness also doesn't mean removing consequences. It means that you release the expectations that they should give you closure, repair, or validation in order for you to be whole, because you are already whole. And I know that this can be very hard to conceive or to grok, especially if it's something that you struggle with when you feel like you've been wronged or slighted, or you have been wronged or slighted or whatever. And there's this natural wanting to resolve something, natural wanting to come to closure. And sometimes people in their consciousness aren't able to give you that. And so when you are stepping into a place of forgiveness, you are understanding that people can only operate from their level of consciousness, and you can choose to release them regardless of what level they are at. And you don't need them to have closure. You can create closure within your own self and repair your own heart, right? So why do we forgive others, and how do we give it? How do we do it? So why forgive? Basically, in a nutshell, holding on to resentment keeps you tied to the pain of the past. It keeps you into these cyclical cycles of continuing to attract people who continue to hurt you as well. Forgiveness frees your energy so that you can actually focus more on joy, creativity, and love. And it also softens the heart and allows your nervous system to rest instead of staying in fight or flight mode, right? So forgiving others creates space for harmony, first within yourself, then in with your relationships with others. So within yourself, resentment clogs the heart, right? It steals your peace, your joy, your sense of well-being, and it keeps you replaying old wounds, in your mind, in your heart, in your body, and in your expectations of how people show up. So forgiveness reclaims your energy and clears the space for joy and creativity and love and abundance. And so within relationships, not everyone deserves to remain in your life, as I've already prefaced that. But for the ones who do, forgiveness creates room for grace, right? It's the understanding that mistakes will happen, and those who truly care for you will grow through them and grow with you. And forgiveness extends a chance for those people to show up better and for you to relate with more softness and compassion. So remember here that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation, although if that is possible and desired, forgiveness can open the door for this to happen. So you don't need someone else's apology, changed behavior. This is huge, right? Because a lot of times we think you need to change in order for me to be okay. And it's really you taking the higher road, stepping into a higher state of consciousness, a more expanded state of consciousness, if you will. And, it means that you are energetically releasing people, right? So you don't need another person's behavior to change or approval to be free. You basically free yourself, right? You are sovereign, so you free yourself. So how do we forgive, right? And this really is, first, we're acknowledging what happened. What is the thing that happened? We'll talk a little bit more about that when we do the journaling prompts. And name the pain honestly and openly, right? Whether you're journaling, speaking with a therapist or a coach, and you're just really getting to know yourself and or speaking to the person who hurt you, right? If they have the capacity to hold space for you, right? With non-harmful, non-toxic people, right? We're acknowledging, giving name to what happened. And then the second step is really deciding that forgiveness is you for your freedom first and not for the other person. So you're choosing forgiveness to free yourself because you know it just feels better to feel free and to have an open heart rather than shutting down and moving into a state of just closed offness from life and from others. And then the third process is that you are using rituals like journaling, meditation, other things, crystals and other things we'll talk about a little bit, to process and release the emotions connected to that person or energy, organization, or situation. So that's basically how we forgive. So I want to get into the ritual for releasing resentment. So this is, let me see. Let's do this first part. And as always, if you are joining me for this challenge, feel free to download your workbook to access more of the resources in this challenge. But for this one, this first ritual is basically you're going to write down the name of someone you hold resentment towards, right? Write down, it could be a name of a person, it could be a name of an organization, a business, whatever it is that you have resentment towards, write that person's or entity's name down. And then the next thing you're going to do is place your hand over your heart and breathe deeply, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And doing that 3 more times, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And 1 more time, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth, calming down your nervous system. And repeat after me, saying aloud, I release you. I forgive you, not to excuse you, but to free myself. I am whole with or without you. And when or if you feel ready, rip up the paper and throw it away, symbolizing that you release this person and or entity without resentment. So here's sort of a litmus test to let you know that you still hold resentment. If the person or entity comes into your mind and you still have the sting, like you really like you want to punch somebody, or like you just feel this like hatred type of energy that arises when that person or entity arises in your mind, then you still have resentment towards that person. And that's sort of your litmus test to know if you're still holding on to resentment, right? So if you feel that you still hold, just doing that simple ritual can be very empowering. But another way is to alchemize that energy, right? Allowing the energy of recognizing the wrongness that was done, right? And recognizing that another step that you can add to this ritual is as you're closing your eyes and before you say that sort of saying aloud, is recognizing that what level of consciousness would someone have to be at, right? A question that you can ask yourself is, what level of consciousness would someone have to be at in order for them to act the way that they acted towards me, in order for them to take actions in the way that they took actions towards me, whatever, or say the things that they said towards me, right? And this is not excusing their behavior, but it's bringing a level of higher consciousness and awareness that someone of a lower vibration or a denser frequency and ignorance, right, would only do that, would only say that, right? And because they did that or said that from a lower level of vibration, you can say, I choose to forgive them because they didn't know better, right? Sort of like a child who made a mistake or something like that. That's one way to do it. Another way of allowing forgiveness, that really works for me, that sort of burns away the sting or the hatred that kind of comes up. Another way that helps is recognizing that, who am I? Who would I be in this moment if I decided to no longer hold on to anger towards this person? Like, what would I have to believe about myself or about that person, right? And just allow your mind and your heart and your soul to sort of answer that. Like, who would you be if you no longer held onto resentment on this person? Maybe you would believe XYZ. So like, for instance, I'll give an example. let's say you held on to resentment of a past lover, right? And they did something wrong to you or said something wrong. And you could say, who would I be if I no longer held resentment towards this person, right? Maybe you would see them from a place of compassion. Maybe you say, even kind of coming back to yourself, right? Because it takes two to tango sometimes, most of the time, not sometimes, most of the time. And so you could say, that's interesting. I definitely forgive myself because I didn't know better. I could have reacted better, or I could have said something better, or did something better, but they could have also done something better. And maybe they were operating out of their own trauma, their own fear, their own ignorance of, their own shadow, right? And so you say, I could believe that, they did the best they could as well as I, and I choose no longer to hold on to that. Doesn't mean that I condone their behavior, and doesn't necessarily mean, depending on what it is they did, that I'm going to let this person back into my life. They really need to get help, and I wish them all the best. Or if they are redeemable or that relationship is redeemable, you say, I choose to see the best in that person, and I'm open to reconciling if that's something that you want, right? So it's many different angles that you can play with that, but those are two ways that you can add to this sort of ritual. So as you're placing your hand on your heart and you're thinking, the first way is, seeing them as sort of a child who made a mistake from a higher level of consciousness. The other way is, who would I be, or what would I believe about my life or myself or this person or entity in order for me to release this energy of resentment and hatred or anger and bitterness, right? So that's basically the ritual. There is a second ritual in the journal and in the challenge. So for those of you who are joining, you will see that in the challenge as well. And I'd like to sort of move into the journaling prompts, right? So when you're ready, go ahead and get out your journal. This is not my journal, this is my calendar, but get out your trusty journal, your pen, and get ready to write down these questions and go through answering these questions. So the first question is, what would forgiveness set me free from? What part of myself am I protecting by holding on to resentment? So the question is, again, what would forgiveness set me free from? And what part of myself am I protecting by holding on to resentment? I can just tell you that one of the things that I worked through on my own for this question was, forgiveness will set me free from continually to vibrationally be a match to repeating old cycles and continuing to attract certain behavior from certain types of individuals. So it would free me from, it would be breaking me from this sort of cyclical nature or pattern or generational pattern or curse, if you want to call it that. And then myself that I was protecting from holding on to resentment was because I have such a big heart and I love so deeply. All usually when you're in my circle, it's because I really trust you and I love you. But by holding on to resentment, for me, I was protecting my heart from loving people so deeply, because that means that I give them the power to hurt me all over again. And so I was protecting myself because I moved into this space of mistrust and discomfort. And I was like, well, if I hold on to this resentment, this is all happening unconsciously by it. But as I was revealing this for myself, if I hold on to resentment longer, this will protect me. And we'll talk about the protector in tomorrow's challenge, day 7. But it will protect me from giving my love away so freely and with less discernment, right? So I was using it as a protective mechanism to protect myself from loving people so openly or trusting people so naively, right? So that was something that came up for me. Just wanted to share that if that was helpful for anyone. The second question is, in what ways have I been waiting on someone else to make me whole And how can I give that gift to myself instead? In what ways have I been waiting on someone else to make me whole by giving me closure, saying I'm sorry for trying to repair the relationship? And how can I give that to myself instead? Something huge that I worked through on my own, especially yesterday, was this huge realization that I had been in this sort of cyclical nature in my life. Like my soul specifically came into this life. And this is not to like discount any loving relationships that I've had. So I'm preface this by saying that first, that I've had loving, caring relationships throughout my life. But one of the things that I noticed is that I've always been in, there's only maybe like two or three relationships that I could say where I was honestly not being slighted. And what I mean by that is that in my own life, I've always tend to have relationships and connections with people who were either jealous of me, who envied me, who wanted to tear me down secretly, who didn't like me, even though they pretended to be my friend or family member or something like that, or who just had like malice towards me, even though I loved them fiercely, right? And it's always been weird to me because I only just realized that probably like, probably yesterday. And it was like a huge, like, wow, this is so interesting that, you know, I have attracted or I put myself in this situations where I've always been in situations or energy around people who loved me with conditions or loved me, but they secretly despised me or secretly hated me or secretly were jealous of me or, you know, wanted to tear me down in some way or wanted to stop me from shining or something like that, right? It's always been really weird. And so I had a huge realization over that. And I was like, the meaning that I'm giving it is that my soul purposefully put me in these situations so I could truly learn the gift of self-love and really truly understanding and knowing my worth, right? Because the best gift you can learn, the best way, not the best way, but one of the most trying ways, we usually learn through pain on this planet, but one of the most trying ways to learn self-love is to continually be in relationships with people who don't truly love you, right? And so you have to like, if you're, so reparenting needs to happen, truly loving yourself and having self-worth and not accepting less than what you deserve, having better boundaries. These are all things that I've learned, you know, over the course of my life. And so it was just sort of this huge realization, you know, going back to that question of, you know, not needing other people to make me whole and giving that to myself. And that was sort of the huge realization that I had when I was working through that question. I was like, wow, like a lot of people, like a good, large, vast majority of people who in my life have either did not love me, pretended to love me, or tried to do things to harm me, or like secretly like despise me or things like that. And I was like, that's so interesting that I would like create this sort of reality, you know? And I'm not saying everybody, but a large, vast majority of people that I had once considered friends or loved ones that I've now distanced myself from. It's like, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's an interesting theme that I noticed. So just wanted to share that if that was helpful for anyone. Okay, so third question is, how would it feel to no longer hold this story or wound against them? How would it feel to no longer hold this story or wound against them? And feel free to pause this to answer the question. And I just kind of want to share my insights because these is questions that I kind of worked through yesterday. And for me, how it would feel, it really feels like I have a new lease on life, right? Personally, having worked through a lot of this stuff and healing my heart and releasing resentment and forgiving others. It feels like I have a new lease on life. It's like I'm writing like I have like the quill in my hand, the pen in my hand, and I'm writing a new script, right? I'm writing a new chapter in my life, right? I'm the author of my own story. And so I'm like back at the drawing board, like, okay, we're writing a completely different stage play, right? Completely new characters, right? Like some of the old characters have to go because they no longer resonate for this new chapter, for this next adventure, right? And so it's like I'm at this sort of precipice, this stage in my life where I'm like, I get to rewrite my life moving forward. I get to decide who makes the cut and who doesn't make the cut, you know, what type of energy I will allow and what type of energy I will not allow, you know. And I feel so fierce and fearless in that energy, like because I work so deeply on my self love and really, really loving myself so deeply, like I'm not afraid to be alone. So, because I'm not afraid to be alone, it feels like, okay, good. I get to go back to the drawing board and talk about what type of relationships I want moving forward, friends, family, business, or otherwise, and it's a different level of consciousness, and it's like a freeing energy. I feel free, like, and I feel powerful in my creative ability to create what I want moving forward. So I just wanted to share my personal insights. Feel free to answer the question of how would it feel to no longer hold this story or wound against them. And then the last question is, what might become possible in my life if I let this go? What might become possible in my life if I let this go? And so those are the 4 questions. Now, in the challenge, there is a somatic meditation for forgiveness of others that I walk you through, as well as a divine soul creation exercise, basically a divine soul creation ritual, where the purpose of this ritual is to help transform the energy of forgiveness into a tangible creation, so that expresses release, compassion, and new possibility. So if that's something that you are interested in learning more about, definitely visit me at divineearthschool.com/heart to join the challenge. And that is basically it for today's challenge. I want to just leave you with these parting words that forgiving others is not about excusing harmful behavior or pretending that what happened didn't affect you, because usually it did, especially if you're watching this video. It's about choosing to no longer carry the weight of what is not yours to hold on to. So every time you release resentment, you free up that energy so that it can now return to fueling your joy, your creativity, your vision, your life purpose, right? And remember, forgiveness is not about, excusing harmful actions. It's about reclaiming your sovereignty. It's also the release that benefits you most, while at the same time offering you an energetic gift to the other person. Because basically, whether or not they consciously realize it, they too can feel the shift when you let go. And because we're all connected, we're all one. And so when you're holding on to something from someone, especially let's say someone you want to reconcile with, they can feel the hardness that you have towards them. So when you release that, it opens a gateway, a door for more healing between that relationship, for those relationships that you want to reconcile and want to redeem, right? And so forgiveness is not only a gift to the other person who hurt you, it's a sacred offering to yourself. It's a declaration that you are no longer defined by the wounds of the past, but by the wholeness that has always lived inside of you. So today, carry the truth that your worth and value were never tied to someone else's actions or choices, and that you are whole in this moment. You are radiant and you are already free. So embodying forgiveness, not just as a one-time act, but as a daily posture of the heart, one that honors your humanity, protects your peace, and amplifies your creative power, right? Because you are divine, sovereign, creative being. So as you step forward, I invite you to bring this lightness into everything that you create moving forward and everything that you are. So peace, love, and light, as always, flow with what feels good and let go of what doesn't, because you are divine. And I will see you in tomorrow's challenge, day 7. Peace, love, and light.